Really cool story. And I will just say, since you brought up the whole curse, lots of people that are really into Oak Island or locals, they roll their eyes at that whole Seven Must Die theory, the curse of Oak Island. That's like the show really leans on that, but there's very little evidence of there ever being a curse, and no real reason why anyone would have put a curse on the island or where it will come from. So, anyway, Dave Blankenship and Dave Blankenship's the son. His father Dan is the one that built 10X. And
can I just interrupt? I just want to point out to the audience that they don't realize that these guys are your friends from the show.
Let's say friends. These are Dan and Dave Blankenship, acquaintances. Dave Blankenship, he was on my podcast, and Dan Blankenship, I've had the pleasure of meeting probably 4 or 5 times when I visited the island. I have pictures with him and managed to shake his hand, and I'm very proud of that because he's someone I've looked up to since I was a little kid. Like, I've learned about Oak Island, I think, in like grade 2 or 3 or something in school here. So I've always looked up to Dan and Dave Blankenship, and I'm very proud to say I met them, and with Dave, proud to say I know him. But anyway, how they got involved is very cool, and I love this story. Dave told it on an episode of my podcast, but what ended up happening was Dave Blankenship, he's the son. He was, I guess, maybe 12 to 14 years old when this started. His dad, Dan Blankenship, he worked in the metal fabrication business. Like, he built stuff out of metal. His dad one day was looking at a copy of the Reader's Digest, and the Reader's Digest happened to have a story about Oak Island. This all happened when they were in Florida. The Blankenships were living in Florida. And he read about Oak Island and just fell in love with the idea of being there and searching for treasure. And also, like every other treasure hunter before him, he thought his ability to work with metal would give him an advantage over other treasure hunters because he thought he could do everything on the cheap, build his own equipment, and do it all his way. He couldn't shake the idea, so he finally said one day to his wife, I'm just going to contact the people working on the island and see if I can, get involved and invest or maybe go down there. So he tried every way to get in touch with them. It was actually the Restalls who were the treasure hunters at the time, the motorcycle stunt rider. So from Florida, Dan Blankenship was trying to get in touch with the Restalls. He couldn't make it happen. So what he did was he hired a lawyer and got his son, David Blankenship, who was, again, at the time, I think about 14. He put them both in the car with the plan of just driving from Florida to Oak Island with a briefcase full of money to try to buy some shares or get involved in the search. So they make the drive, and I think it was a 3 or 4 day drive to get to from Florida to Nova Scotia. Yeah, so they made the drive, just driving all day and all night pretty much, just stopping to sleep in the car. When they get... And this would have been in the early to mid 60s. When they finally get to Oak Island, they show up and they meet the Restalls and with a briefcase of money, and the Restalls turn them away, basically saying, like, we're not looking for any investors. We're close to finding the treasure. We don't need any money or anybody's help, but we'll give you a tour of the island. So they spent a day on the island with the Restalls, and then with their tails between their legs, got back in the car to make the drive back to Florida. And I think they were about a day and a half away on their way back, and they stopped at a hotel to spend the night. And while they were in the hotel, somebody had called them and said, did you hear what happened in Oak Island? And Dan Blankenship said, like, no, what happened in Oak Island? We were just there. And that was when they were told about the Restall tragedy. They said, he fell in and they all just died. So the people that had just turned him away 2 days prior were just killed the night before. So he was there the day before they were killed, and I'm sure he felt terrible about the whole thing. But whether or not he did or didn't, what they ended up doing was getting back in their car and turning around to go back towards Oak Island with the plan of finding out who's going to own that part of the island now that the Restalls are dead, and try to make a deal with them. So he ended up doing it. He got back there and ended up working out something, and his lawyer was there, as I mentioned, and they ended up buying, along with Dunfield, controlling shares of the island and the ability to search for treasure there. So initially, Dunfield and the Blankenships were involved and had a company together Dunfield did his crazy search where he was just digging the whole thing up and turning it all upside down. After, I think, about a year and a half, he gave up because he spent a fortune. And that was when Dan and Dave Blankenship took over. They've been living there ever since. And up until the point that the TV show starts, which is 4 or 5 years ago, the Blankenships have been the one controlling the island. Of all the work they've done, what's most well known is 10X, which is a separate pit that Dan Blankenship and Dave Blankenship and a few of their friends built. And I'll tell you the story of this too, because this is also a crazy story. And when you hear the story or you see it on TV, it sounds unreal. But being someone who's been there and touched it and looked down it, like what they did is absolutely unimaginable. And the fact that nobody died doing this, and the fact that these guys are alive to tell their story, to me is absolutely insane. Because what they did is, Dan Blankenship believed in this thing called dowsing, and that's basically when you take 2 sticks and you just hold them out, one in each hand, and you just hold them out. And as you walk, the idea is if there's a void under the ground, be it water or oil, the sticks will react in some way. Good use of the sound effects. So back in the day, when people would search for oil, like the old oil prospectors, they would use this dowsing technique to try to find oil. Dan Blankenship believed in it. He wanted to find voids under the ground, thinking that the void would be full of gold or treasure chests or whatever. He ended up finding an area through his dowsing, and he sunk a drill. I think he put the drill down like 180 feet or something like that. And as the drill's digging, it's pulling up debris from way down low in the ground. And he ended up finding things that made him believe there was something down there. He found he pulled up shards of metal from buried deep below, and also there was signs of there being large cavities. So he thought. And he found pieces of wood as well, that he just thought there was something down there. He wanted to get there, so what he did was he had the initial hole drilled. He now used a bigger drill to make it a bit wider, and he lined it with lead. He made it a little bit bigger, and because his ultimate plan was to get down there. Finally, what he did was he had, I think it was about 22 inches, like pretty much just big enough to squeeze in. So he had like 180-foot deep hole that was about 22 inches wide, just wide enough for him to get in. And what he was doing was he was getting his son David to lower him down with a rope. So they had like a machine set up to hoist the father down, and the dad was going down there to try to figure out what was going on down there. But anyway, he was down there one day. I think he was at about the 60-foot level, and he describes this on my show. But the pipe that he was in started to buckle. He could while he was down there, he could hear it creaking and slowly caving in. So he yelled to his son, like, pull me out, pull me out. And his son managed to pull him out pretty much as the whole thing was collapsing behind his dad. So it sounds like something out of a movie, but. Anyway, the son got the dad, Dan Blankenship, out of there alive. And now this is what I find so cool, is he didn't give up. He wanted to get back down, but he realized that it wasn't stable. So he needed some way to he needed something more stable. He needed to make it bigger, and he needed to reinforce it. So what he did, and again, he didn't have much money, but he knew how to work with metal, which is why he was so confident anyway. So what he did was he found a nearby town selling...
Did he play heavy metal too?
No, but these guys didn't need to. These are
they
bad
were just
dudes.
like wicked metalheads that didn't play heavy. Did they listen to heavy metal like Ozzy and shit back then?
No, I would picture, having met Dan Blankenship, I picture him listening to like some guy with like straw in his mouth picking on a banjo. I think he's that type of dude.
Yeehaw! Well, I listen to that too. Yeehaw! Everybody dance. Get up. Work. Come on. Don't you know? Let her go. All right.
So he made these bigger metal round tubes.
Yes.
How did he drill them in there?
They had massive drills, like a borehole. I don't know what the equipment's called, but a borehole is basically that is just like a big hole in a pipe. Like they build a hole in the pipe as the hole's getting dug, the pipe's getting laid as they do it. It's like when you drill a well, that's the same kind of equipment. I don't know what it's called, but what they ended up
My brother is he works in the oil fields, and he's the one that actually supplies all the tools. So they bring out like the pipes, and they bring out the drills, and like you said, they drill at the same time they're laying the pipe in. So it's the drill is kind of lines the pipe as they go.
Yeah, I don't know what this stuff is called, but what they ended up doing to widen it is they ended up finding a local business that was involved in moving, I think, water and oil around. They were selling old train cars that were used for holding oil. So it's like you would have seen them. They're just the big cylindrical train cars. They ended up buying 3 of them, and what he did was he where the 10X was dug, he had the train car vertical, so the butt end of the train car is against the hole and standing up straight. And what they did was they kind of dug around it, and just the weight of the train car as they dug it slowly was sinking. And they had a hole cut in the bottom of it, so they were inside the train car pulling the dirt out from underneath it and digging around it and just letting the weight of the train car pull itself down into the ground. Once it got down,
bazinga, bazinga, bazinga.
All right, that's enough. You know what? that means that we probably should take a short musical interlude break.
Let's do it.
All right, because you probably need to wet your whistle, get some more screech or whatever you drink over there, and
let's not forget where we left off. With the train.
No.
Okay. Yeah, and then we're going to dig deeper into Oak Island, way deeper. I'm gonna play a little bit of maritime sort of Celtic music. How's that sound?
Sounds awesome.
All right. This is the Wolfman, and dig some of this. All right, yeah. If it's gonna work, baby, yeah. Gotta get it going, get this strange music going. All right, yeah. From the Wolfman, some Mike Oldfield.
We're not coming to the podcast, are we?
A video game.
No!
Well, okay. You pick a toy.
I want... log! Boy, oh boy!
Yes, log. All kids love log.
What rolls downstairs, the motor and pairs, rolls over your neighbor's dog. What's great for a snack and fits on your back? It's log, log, log. It's log, log. It's big, it's heavy, it's wood. It's log, log. It's better than that, it's good. Everyone wants a log. You're gonna love it, log. Come on and get your log. Everyone needs a log.
Log from Blammo.
Oh, yeah. And that was a word from our sponsor. Yeah. Everyone buy a log. There's logs under the ground on Oak Island, so I threw that in there.
There's never a reason not to include that.
I know.
Did they find any of those logs?
Well, there
enough of them.
All the early, like the original stuff, the original money pit, that's all long lost. In fact, there's no concrete evidence really of any of that early stuff. They can't for sure say where it even is. Although the new season of the television show Oak Island, they're claiming that they're going to find the original pit and dig there. They have a pretty good idea. Like when you go to visit the island, there's like kind of just this flattened area where it's like this is the money pit site, but nobody knows exactly where in that area it is.
Is that kind of by Smith's Cove? I'm looking at the map here, and I'm
Smith's Cove is if you're looking at Smith's Cove, that is believed to be a man-made beach. That they don't believe that to be natural. And that is where the majority of the finger drains come from. So there's been a lot of work done at Smith's Cove, digging it up, looking for these box drains. It's a lot of coconut fiber there. I have on my Facebook a lot of like clear photos of that area, but you can see it just on the map. From Smith's Cove, you would walk in about maybe a 5-minute walk, if that, and that's where the money pit area is. So it's a pretty good distance that these drains take up. And 10X is kind of in the middle between Smith's Cove and the money pit. So it's all kind of in that area around Smith's Cove where this is all going on. You'll also see the swamp. If you're looking at the map, there's another area that's very near the money pit. We just, on the TV show or the people into it, they just call it the swamp. But it's thought to be man-made. It's almost a perfect triangle if looked at from above. So on a map, it's clear as day. There's just a triangle swamp. And when you stand there, you can even see that it's a triangle. It's just a kind of an odd place. I'm not going to say it's man-made, but it's definitely unlike any swamp I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's very clear. I'm looking at the aerial map here on Google Maps, and it's it really sticks out. Here's this triangle, and then they have that itself seems like kind of like a, maybe that was the pit at some point, because it's
didn't they build a dam there too?
Yeah, well, there's actually a few different. There's been a lot of dams built because so many people doing the treasure hunting. They're trying to prevent the water from getting from the ocean into whatever pit they're digging. Since it's a small island surrounded by water, like most islands are, when you dig down far enough, water starts getting in. So many people and prior treasure hunters, they'll build dams to keep water away from the pits that they're digging. So there's been dams built all over the place there. And the swamp has been drained countless times to look underneath it, and people have found cool stuff, but nothing, that takes it too far.
What have they found in the swamp?
They have found unusual logs. For one, they found, this maybe the last 10 years, they found a large tree stump, a massive tree stump that I think was 300 or 400 years old down below the swamp. But what is interesting about that is that the type of tree it was doesn't grow in water, like it wouldn't grow in a swamp. So the idea is this tree must have been there before the swamp was there. Thus, somebody must have built the swamp sometime between this tree being cut down and present day where the swamp is there. Because so many people believe this to be all a man-made thing that was done sometime around the 16th, 17th century. So when they're looking for artifacts, they're always looking for anything over 221 years old, because if you find a piece of metal underground on Oak Island, it's likely to be something left by a prior treasure hunter, like an old chain or an old piece of a tool or something. But if that piece of metal is 222 years old, then it was left there before all this started, so it's considered to be original. But a lot of what they're looking for is around 16th and 17th century, because they're finding a lot of coins, and they found those scissors that I mentioned, and they found an old shoe underground, all from around that area. So they're thinking whoever was on Oak Island around that time had no good reason to be there. So maybe they're the ones that did all this.
Was the shoe still usable?
Yeah, and something interesting about the shoe is it was very big. I've seen the shoe. I have photos of it on my Facebook. It's in the museum there. I don't know I think it was a size 14 shoe. It was a really, really big shoe.
Maybe it was Bigfoot that was there.
Yeah, so it just doesn't make sense. It's just odd that you find one shoe on this island, and the shoe's 400 years old, and it's a size 14. It's just, what are the chances that it would be that big of a shoe? But yeah, it was just a leather, handmade shoe from way back in the day.
Wow.
It's huge.
Dan Blankenship found old metal, didn't he?
Oh, yeah. Dan Blankenship found all kinds of things. A lot of stuff he pulled out of 10X. But Dan Blankenship's been there since the 60s, searching nonstop. It's his full-time thing. He searched day and night. He still lives on the island now. And he's found a lot of stuff. In fact, when you go to the museum, the majority of what's in there is stuff that Dan Blankenship managed to pull out of the ground. Although there's some stuff there from prior to him. But he's really the first... The Blankenships are really the first treasure hunters that really valued archiving it and keeping track of what they were doing and sharing their discoveries with everybody else. And that's kind of the spirit of the museum when you go there, is they're showcasing everything they did, where everybody before them, they had journals and they kept notes and stuff, but they weren't, taking photographs and accurate measurements for the purposes of sharing it with other people. And that's what
wanted the gold.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's everybody else just wanted the gold, and everybody else was so confident that they were the ones to do it. Dan Blankenship's also been confident he'd be the one to do it, but he's just a lot more interested in sharing it with everybody else for whatever reason. He's a very and when you meet him, you see why. He's a very nice, sociable guy. Even now, I think he's in his 90s, but every time I've been to the island, he's just been sitting in the museum, which is as soon as you arrive on the island, you're at the museum. It's kind of like a museum with a gift shop and a little canteen area, and he's just sitting there drinking pop and just with a smile on his face, talking to anybody who will talk to him. He absolutely loves it. So I think he's sharing it because I think he loves the mystery and just wants to share it with other people that are interested in it.
Maybe we should go back to 10X with the train cars.
Yeah, so anyway, what he did, what Dan Blankenship and his son and a few other of their friends did, is they had the train cars vertical, letting the weight of the train cars pull itself into the ground. He pile another one up on top of it. The two of them would slide down a bit more as they're digging. And what they ended up doing to support 10X, this pit they were digging, that they were convinced that something important was at the bottom of, they managed to get 3 train cars all one on top of the other, vertical under the ground, and then they went down in the train cars and welded supporting a supporting skeleton kind of within it, and that's still there today. You see pictures all the time of 10X on the television show The Curse of Oak Island. They sent divers down 10X last year, so 10X is a big deal. At the bottom of the 3 train cars, the original structure's still there. The portion that didn't collapse, they managed to reinforce it with concrete, and even below that, it eventually gets to the bedrock, like the rock that exists naturally under the ground that has been drilled out, and under the bedrock is a cavity or a void. Dan Blankenship back in the 70s managed to get down into that void, which is, I think, about 180 feet deep
how do you know?
before you end up in the void.
There?
He, on his own, dove down there 2 or 3 times, and he took a camcorder with him. In the video that everybody sees when they watch the TV show, it's this old grainy black and white footage where he believes he filmed a treasure chest, and a skeleton, and some old tools, and a treasure chest, if I didn't already say that. But a lot of the television show has been them trying to get back down there with professional divers and real equipment to try to find out, what's actually down there. And last year they did get a diver down there. He couldn't film because it was so dark and murky, but he felt his way around, and he believed, this diver, that it was a natural cavity, and that what Dan Blankenship believed to be a treasure chest was actually just a large rock sitting down there. But nobody's really convinced, and this season of the television show, it looks like they're going to continue to look into 10X.
So, has there been any findings that they didn't mention on the TV show that you may know about?
I wish. No. And in fact, even what's gone on, or what will happen on this television show, although I have friends on the show, I'm not privy to what actually will go on. So I'm watching it with fresh eyes, just like everybody else. And as far as discoveries, my opinion is, as far as what's on there, what's going on Oak Island, I have no idea. But my opinion about the whole thing is it's about the journey as opposed to the destination. I don't believe they're about to find these treasure chests that are deep below the ground, but I just enjoy, and the reason I'm so into Oak Island is I just enjoy all the weird little things that are going on there and all the different theories of what could be going on, and I just enjoy kind of the game of trying to put this puzzle together.
Yeah, but who would go through the trouble of setting up that elaborate the hole and with water trap coming in and the logs underneath the ground? Like, that's not natural. You don't get logs buried down under the ground like that, and then flagstone and other stuff, and then coconut fibers.
It's bizarre, and
then. And do all that work, and then there's nothing there. I gotta say, there's gotta be something there. Too.
Yeah, that's one theory. But another theory is, and here's the skeptical theory. Not that I believe this, but I'll just to play devil's advocate. I did an episode of my show where I had the episode was called "A Skeptical Look at Oak Island and Bell Island," and my guest on the show was Brian Dunning, who's a I guess we'll call him a scientist / researcher. He has a popular show called Skeptoid, and what his opinion is that
Amy would like him.
Throughout history, people were trying to inflate the value of the company that they had to sell off to somebody else. So, and I guess this is something that is done in like oil prospecting and mining. They call it salting the mine, and that's basically to do something to make it look like you're close to the answer, to inflate the value so you could sell it to somebody else. His opinion was a lot of people in the early days were creating these discoveries just for the purpose of inflating the value and selling it off. I don't know if that's true, but I do find it odd that of all these prior discoveries, there's no evidence of it aside from, again, journals and stuff. But I guess it happened so long ago that it makes sense that there's not photos.
Okay. What about the sword that was? Sorry, I know we have limited time. You wouldn't believe how fast 3 hours goes. So I want to jump into the sword. Do you know anything about the sword that was recovered off the shore?
Yeah, well, I know it's a bunch of BS.
Okay.
In the sword, like for people who are into Oak Island, we don't like talking about the sword, but basically, just because it gives Oak Island a bit of not a bad name, but it just.
Disinformation.
The sword blew up in the media, and it really had nothing to do with Oak Island. It's all specific to one person won't even say his name. He's somebody who was on the television show early on, and he's said to have had a falling out with the producers and the people involved in the show, and he wasn't involved in the show anymore.
Okay, bonk.
but he's still very much involved online in talking about Oak Island and, you know, just being involved in it. He's involved in this sword, but basically a sword turned up. It was said to have been found in the waters of the Mahone Bay, and I think it was said to be Spanish or Greek, or I think Greek, the
Roman.
sword. Anyway, what ended up
So
happening
I heard
was a
Roman.
press release.
And then I heard later that it was a replica, and these are very easily found online. It's a Roman
on
sword
eBay,
replica.
you can buy them on eBay.
Yeah.
So anyway, what ended up happening, and this is before the TV show got involved in this, is this guy, he found this sword supposedly in the area of Oak Island. He sent a press release to all these different media outlets saying, like, you know, massive discovery at Oak Island, there's this sword. So the media started reporting on it. And it just blew up. It was all over Facebook and Twitter and this and that, and different people were talking about it. But then what ended up happening was the TV show starts airing, and the TV show, like, one of the episodes covered it, and in the episode that covered it, the sword was presented to the people on the show, and they're looking at it, and it tells the story of how the sword was found. And then they, at the end of the episode, are like, we're going to look into this sword and see what's going on. That episode ends, and then this whole thing blows up in the media, where it's on Facebook and in the media, it was made. If you didn't watch the show and you just read the articles, you would think that the people in the TV show were telling people that this sword is, you know, very important and it's going to change Oak Island forever. So it blew up. But then what ended up happening is on the next episode of the show, they deem it to be a replica that was found on eBay, but nobody reported that in the news or anything. So it created this big black eye around Oak Island, where if you didn't follow the story as it all played out, you would think that the people on the TV show tried to pass the sword off as being legit, but they didn't at all. They ruled it out. It's just it blew up in the media much quicker than they released one episode a week, so it all blew up before their next episode came out where they debunk it. So just kind of sucks. But what's interesting about the person who's said to be behind this sword and this whole charade is I have a friend who works for a local newspaper. In this newspaper, they don't really cover, like, I don't know what you call them, but they're kind of like a gossip magazine. So, like, if a politician's having an affair, this is the newspaper that's going to cover it. Or if a local doctor, you know, does something crazy, this newspaper will be the one that'll break it. And they're always getting sued for writing crazy stories and slander and all that kind of stuff. So it's a really racy paper. But this guy from the States who was involved in the sword, he was trying to engage the local media around Oak Island, where I live is near there in Halifax. So what he was doing was he was calling this newspaper, which again would never report on, like, Oak Island. They're reporting on, you know, affairs and such. But he kept calling the studio trying to get in touch with my friend who's a writer at this newspaper. But my friend had recorded the whole thing, and this guy's calling pretty much demanding this guy interview him. And the guy keeps hanging up on him. But anyway, it ended up getting released online, and you can hear the whole thing where it's this guy just calling the newspaper over and over again, trying to get them to interview him, and they're telling him that they're not interested in hearing about it, and, you know, it's not something they plan to cover. But he used that as proof that this guy who brought the sword up, he believed that the media not being interested in talking to him is proof that the media is trying to ignore the fact that the sword is a replica. And, you know, in I don't know, it's just, it's all a bunch of craziness. I don't like that sword.
Yeah.
So I think I talked about what I didn't want to talk about for 5 minutes.
Yeah. Let's go on to go ahead, Darren.
I was going to ask him, so after he got to 10X, Dan, did he run out of money? I mean, there's a long period of time there where he didn't do much.
Yeah, well, Dan Blankenship, it was him and two other partners. There's Fred Nolan, and if you watch the TV show, you would have seen him. He was a land surveyor, and a lot of the work he did on the island was above ground. He was looking at where rocks are, where depressions on the island are, and looking for a grander puzzle on the surface within the stones and just the geography on the land. His great discovery is what's called Nolan's Cross, which is basically named after him. His name was Fred Nolan. Is
that the other older gentleman?
Yep, and he actually just passed away.
Oh,
I don't think.
I was wondering why he wasn't on the new episode, because he said he wanted to make friends, last year. He's getting too old.
Yeah, he passed away while the show wasn't running. I'm sure an upcoming episode will talk about that, I would imagine. He's well in his 90s, but his great discovery was Nolan's Cross, which is a couple large stones that are kind of cone-shaped and just unusual for the island that seem to create a large Christian cross over the island. And that's kind of his great discovery on the island is this cross. But what ended up happening was Dan Blankenship, who was doing a lot of the digging, Fred Nolan, who was looking on the ground, and another guy who was the company and what they were doing together fell apart, and they all started kind of their own separate work on the island. Dan Blankenship stuck just with 10X in the surrounding area. Fred Nolan had his property and wouldn't let anyone on his property, so he was doing his own work, and that really slowed things down and eventually led to them losing steam such that their discoveries really stopped. And in the 90s, there was barely anything going on. Dan Blankenship at that point, as well as Fred Nolan, were entering their mid to late 70s, and they started to look to sell. Dan Blankenship started to look to sell. And when Dan Blankenship sold his shares, it was to the people who now do the TV show, the Laginas.
Right. They have a big business, don't they? They have a lot of money, or at least one of them does.
They do. One of them does. The younger brother, Marty, he owns. I think he's from Michigan. The both of them. I think he owns an electricity company or electrical company. So they do have a lot of money, but since they've been kids, they've been very into Oak Island, very passionate about it. They don't need the money this TV show is getting them. Those guys are there because they want to be there, and when you meet them, like I've met them both. A number of times, it's just like trying to think of a good analogy. I was going to use a hockey analogy, but a lot of your listeners are probably from the States. But when you're talking to them, it's like you're talking to a kid in a candy store. You can see it in their eyes. They're passionate about it. They want to talk to you. You can tell it's all they think about. So people accuse them of trying to build up hype just to have a successful TV show, not realizing that these guys are already rich and they don't need this TV show. This is something they want to do, and it's obvious when you meet them.
That's the feeling I have, watching the
absolutely.
show.
And same thing with Dan Blankenship. When you meet him, he's a close to 90-year-old man who, when you start, he's sitting in the chair just like any 90-year-old, and he's just, he looks like he has no energy, and he looks he's about to close his eyes and fall asleep. But when you go over and bring up 10X, he sits up in his chair and his eyes open, and he just starts going, like just starts talking about it. Like he's these people. There's something about the people who get into Oak Island. Not everybody's into it, but the people who are into it are so passionate about it. You only have to go on Facebook and go to the different Oak Island groups, because there's groups of people just theorizing and strategizing and discussing it, and they're
I've got a great question.
They're very into it. Go ahead with your question.
I got a great question I want to know about some of the stone tablets that were found and the glyphs and what type of language possibly was. And I know there was one found on the beach with I think it was Viking,
a big G for the hell are they called?
Almost like like could be the Knights Templar.
Yeah, there's lots of theories that they're Knights Templar. Although I haven't seen anything that really.
What about Polynesians? Could it have been the Polynesians?
It could have been anybody.
There's
so many theories that all
idiot.
Because it could go way
so
back to when they started mining copper in North America. I think it was the Polynesians and maybe the Phoenicians, or the Yeah, even Egyptians, like, where did they get all their copper from? Well, they found big mines where copper's been mined out millions and thousands of years ago in North America that had went to other countries all over the world. So,
and there's the type of clay that's common in Oak Island. I think they just call it blue clay. I think in Egypt that was very valuable. They used it to get blue pigment for paint.
Yeah, I heard about
blue
that
was
too.
a very important color there because
so they would have had to come to North America way back then in order to get this stuff.
Yeah. Could it have been a mine for the blue pigment?
It could have been, clay? Yeah. It could have been, and
they actually did. I read something on that. They actually that clay that you're talking about, I believe, is present on Oak Island. Is it not?
It's beyond present. It's common. It's
all wow! Yeah, that's what I thought. So this could have been a place, and it's great for stopping by on a journey down further south if you're traveling across the Atlantic.
If you look at Oak Island from above, it wouldn't be hard to get to from the ocean. It's not like you got to go, too out of the way into harbors and stuff. It's just right there.
Okay, so wait a minute.
You never know.
Could a sparrow carry a coconut across the Atlantic, and what type of sparrow would it be?
That's a swallow.
Oh, no. No, your wrong answer. Nope. Sorry. It's an African swallow.
African swallow.
There has been Egyptian hieroglyphs found in and around this part of Nova Scotia. That said, the hieroglyphs that are found are rumored to be much newer than what the ancient Egyptians would have carved. So,
what about the other 200 islands that you said were there? Do they all have the same clay, or is Oak Island unusual?
Oak Island is unusual in that it has a lot more of the clay than the other islands. Other spots have it, but Oak Island seems to be full of it.
Was there any Minoan writing ever found?
No, I don't know what that is.
No, Minoan, like from an island off Greece, because they would have had to have. I don't know. It was one of the. I got this out of the chat room.
Okay, yeah, no, I've never heard of that, but I have heard of something called pine tar mines, and these were, I don't know if I would say common, but this was something that happened a lot in Atlantic Canada back in the day. And what it was they would pile pine trees up, they'd light them on fire, and then they would dig down underneath the ashes of the pine trees and find pine tar, because I guess as the trees were burning, this tar would sink into the ground. Then what they would do is they'd pile more trees, light it up, dig down to get the tar, and it was very messy and damaging. So it was usually done on an island near the shore, and it would be done on the same spot over and over again. And there is a theory that this is an ancient pine tar mine site, in that what they're finding is old artifacts left behind by people who were working in the pine tar operation. Although that, of course, it hasn't been proven. That's one of 25,000 million theories there must be. But
why
that's
the coconut fibers, though? That wouldn't make sense with the coconut fibers.
Well, no, it wouldn't. But coconut fibers in this part of the world, our history going back is lots of trade with boats. We're right on the water, of course, right on the ocean. So there's lots of boats coming and going, and I believe a lot of things back in the day, as they were shipping liquor or whatever, it would be packed with. They would use the coconut fibers for like the way we would now use styrofoam popcorn and stuff. And one theory is that the site of where Oak Island is, or where this Money Pit and Smith's Cove and all that, once upon a time was a repair shop kind of thing for boats, and that there was a lot more boats coming and going, and they think that's the reason why there's Spanish coins and coconut fibers and weird pieces of wood underground that just seem out of place. But Just one of the other theories.
I think it's still there in the money pit, whatever they're going to find. I think that guy in the 50s, that dumb guy, whatever his name was.
Dunfield.
I think he just messed it all up and just couldn't. I bet he didn't find it. I bet he moved it around. I bet it's still there. I bet there's stuff still there.
Well, I'll tell you.
I can't believe we haven't had a caller yet. Doesn't anyone out there have a question for Jordan? Come on, you people, grow some testicles. Coconuts. Grow some coconuts and call in, please. Come on, people.
Yeah, I see I'm looking at the chat now, so maybe it was one of you. The Roman sword is there, and that's one of the Lagina brothers holding his hand up next to it to get an indication of its size.
What did you see the new episode?
Oh my God, yeah. The girl they go to. You watched, I'm assuming. They go to the castle in New Ross, and they meet the girl who owns that property.
Yes.
Yeah, she's a good friend of mine, and she, oddly enough, and this is going to make Nova Scotia sound like a small place or something. I had no idea she was going to be on this season, but she was recently on my podcast telling a story completely unrelated to Oak Island or her property. So I had met her through my podcast. She was on sharing a story of a house she lived in a few years ago that was rumored to be haunted. So we talked about that, and then when I turned on the show the other day. She's on it. I'm just like, what the hell? But I emailed her and stuff afterwards, and I'm going to go see that property this summer. I knew she had bought it, and I knew there was rumors of Templar involvement in the well on her property, but I had never heard the whole story. But it's just kind of crazy the way that happened. That and the other hatch that they found, and that other map, and the other writing, that was fascinating. Yeah, that's it. We'll see what comes of it. It's very cool. And this season, some things I do know about this season is that they're going to look into quite a few things, but really try to sort out from the history of, like I told you, the super condensed version of Oak Island's history. A lot of, I believe what's going to happen this year is they're going to try to go through a lot of that stuff and see what can be proven to be true and what can't, and try to find the true story of what happened there. And I do know that a lot of work is being done on the site rumored to be the Money Pit. When I was on the island last, there was massive cranes and massive pipes in the ground. You can find pictures of it online because people, like, the cranes were so big you could see them from the mainland. So what people were doing was going around the island in a boat and taking pictures of it. And when that wasn't good enough, they sent drones over. Like, somebody flew a drone over taking pictures to see what the guys filming the show were doing. And you can see photos of the Money Pit site in a very, very massive operation and a massive dig there. So something big's going to happen on the Money Pit area during this season. I know that for sure. I hope they find a bunch of stuff in the dirt. I hope they find the logs. It'd be so cool. And I hope they go in that hatch. That hatch thing looks amazing. Yeah, well, we'll see what it is. And that came out of nowhere. Nobody's ever heard of that until this season. They basically what had happened was a weird, somebody had bought an old book, and there was a map in the fold in the back cover, I guess, of Oak Island, and it had a few sites on there. I don't remember. I think it was in French. One of the sites was called the Hatch, and when they went looking where the hatch was on the map, which ended up being right next to Dave Blankenship's property, Dave Blankenship remembered an anomaly near his property line, and that was right where the hatch was. And it's just kind of like a dugout hole that's square and like kind of brick looking. It looks almost like a fireplace going into the ground or something. So we'll see what that is. Yeah, cool. I'm curious, but any new discovery on the island is very cool. And it seems like every time they dig, they find something. Yeah, and they're always looking. When I was there, if you watch the TV show, one of the guys on the show is Jack Begley. He's the young guy from the States who's assisting them. When I was there last, we were driving around on golf carts because there's trails there, like the pathways and stuff and the roads on the island. We were going through on golf carts, and I just saw and it's kind of sundown, so it's getting dark, and I just saw somebody in the woods. And there's not people on Oak Island, there's people live there, but you don't see people walking around and stuff. And I just saw some in the woods, and we slowed down to be like, who is that? And then just out of the thick woods, and it was a wet day, so he's all muddy and crazy looking. It was Jack Begley, and what he was doing is he was just pretty much like, I think what he did was he set up a grid, and he was trying to walk across every bit of the island. So he was just trucking through the bushes and and all that, not on his hands and knees, but pretty close to it, just looking for anything interesting. And I had asked him, like, how often are you just just looking through the woods here? And he said, sorry, did I lose you?
Nope, we're here.
Okay,
I'm waiting for Jeff to ask you a question, and then we're going to go for a musical break, unless you want it right now. I know probably.
Do you want your question, Jeff?
I was just, I was real curious about it. I mean, because you said there's a lot of like little finger type of drains.
Yeah, they call them
going
finger
into
drains.
it.
Yeah.
What is there like? Was there like any major like tunnels, or is just like a bunch of little drains to prevent, people from digging in and keep filling up?
Yeah, well, there's a bunch of little drains, and what people think the drains are for is to bring water from the ocean into the island to flood these tunnels. And there are tunnels deep below the ground. In fact, on the last season of the television show, the diver went down below 10x into the bedrock where there are natural tunnels. Some think the tunnels were man-made and carved. Some people think it's just a natural geological thing that happens deep below the ground.
Do you want to know what I think?
What?
I think that they are man-made, and before the Great Flood, I think that they were dry, and that area was all dry, and now like other sunken cities and sunken pyramids around the world, areas like the Bahamas where you have possibly the remains of Atlantis. This is underwater now, and that's why these tunnels are all flooded.
Do you think they were booby traps, Jordan?
Yeah, I do. The box drains, or like these finger drains, they're unusual. I don't know why they would be there. They're also angled so that water is running into the island. But being a homeowner, I know that what I try to do is keep water away from my stuff. So I want all the water to run away from my home. So whoever built anything on that island, you would think that what they'd be trying to do is get the water to go away from the island towards the ocean. So the drain should be angled in the opposite direction, so the water is running down to the island, to the ocean, rather than running from the ocean down towards the center of the island. That doesn't make any sense.
Wait a minute. So they have actually determined the grade of these tunnels. I didn't think that they had determined it, because I was still thinking that when it was dry that they may have been used for drainage.
No, the grade is said to be pointed to descend as it enters the island, if you know what I mean. So water running down.
Yeah, that's strange. You're right. That is strange.
What do they call them? Underground booby trap flood tunnels.
Exactly.
How the hell would you make something like that? That is incredible.
There are some theories as to how it was made. One of the theories is that it was originally two separate islands, and somebody put everything in the center and filled it in to form one large island rather than two. And the part that was said to be added was where the Triangle Swamp is, as well as Smith's Cove. But that's just a theory.
Huh. Dan Blankenship thinks that
we're gonna
really
Darren.
important. Yes.
We're gonna take a break right now. Okay.
Okay.
We've gone on for quite a while now. I'm sure that our guest needs to wet his whistle, and I know I do. Everybody else, I hope you enjoy this. Beautiful. This is from a suggestion from Moog Boy. I'm going to put on some music from, I think it's Halifax. No, it's from New Brunswick.
The Trailer Park Boys one?
No.
I think that's the one.
I'm going to try this one here.
From Nova Scotia.
This one here.
It's Sons of Maxwell. Dig it all right with the Wolfman rock and roll. Yeah, baby. Oh, yeah.
ice and let have made all that glorious big plans on top of all the messed up sheets on the bed I made. I should run, I'm almost late to go and join the parade. But it's like I'm fighting an uphill battle these days. It's like I'm fighting an uphill battle these days. It's like I'm fighting an uphill battle these days.
I love that song. Do you love that song?
Watching Jerry Lewis call the pledges, I sit and reminisce about the days when I was 17 years old, and as crazy as it seemed, I couldn't wear my new shoes or my back to school jeans until the first day of the school year when all my friends would show up clean and shiny just like me. We would separate the pearls, and by that I do mean girls, from the ones who we decided looked too much like milk and bread. Hey, hey, it's gonna happen, no matter what you do or say, so stay your overcomer from the games that people play. Sitting on my perch out at a nightclub, I watch a scene I've seen 1,000 times. There's a hot girl at the bar, selling hope to hopeful men. Oh, the crazy super low price of a vodka I'm watching at when a lovely lady leaves for the evening. She's bragging how she hasn't dropped a dime. That may be luck in one regard, but I think it's so bizarre. She can leave her home without a cent, a bank or credit card. Hey, hey, it's gonna happen, no matter what you do or say, so stay your overcomer from the games that people play. Someone gave me the instructions, I don't know, all the rules seem to change. Every time that I think I've got it figured out, skin. And know if I can beat 'em, I can always jump right in. Hey, hey, it's gonna happen. No matter what you do or say, so stay your own brother from the games that people play. From the games that people play. From the games that people play.
Oh yeah! Wolfman Mike gonna dig it, give it to you, baby. Rock and roll, yeah, baby. Ow.
There's some, do you guys feel like you're in the pub down there?
That's a good song, The Games That People Play.
Yeah, I like that one. Yeah, I like that one. That was a suggestion from Moog Boy in the chat room. The next suggestion has nothing to do with New Brunswick, but we have a request for some Ted Nugent, Wango Tango, up next.
Sweet.
Absolutely nothing to do with the subject, but it is a fun song, and I can't refuse it.
Sounds good.
All right, so where were we now? You know what I want to do? Because we're in the second half of the show now, I want to move on to the Bell Island Boom.
A different island.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
When they drilled down and they found the gold chain and the piece of parchment with writing on it,
Oh, yeah.
is that real?
That's real, yeah. And the parchment was just a tiny little piece of paper, I think with an F on it. But that has led to the theory that what could be buried in there is original Shakespearean manuscripts. And there is some evidence relating Shakespeare's writing to Oak Island. If you look at, I'm not sure what book it is, but there's a certain Shakespeare book. If you take the original print of it, there's odd typos, odd spacing, and odd capitalization, just some words capitalized for no good reason. And there is a researcher, an Oak Island researcher named Peter Amundsen, and he is the one leading kind of the theory that it's relating to Shakespeare. And he's researched these typos and these errors and this weird spacing, and he's drawn graphs and he's laid it over maps and blah, blah, blah. But he has a pretty good belief and makes a pretty good case for the fact that it's related to Shakespeare in some way. But he actually has a documentary he just released, I think maybe last year. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but it's he tells his story in the documentary. Let me just Google the name since we're talking about it. Peter Amundsen was on the first season of Oak Island. The documentary is called Shakespeare: The Hidden Truth. He was on the first season of The Curse of Oak Island. He's a well-known researcher. I'm not sure where he's from. He speaks with an accent. He's from somewhere far
Norwegian,
from here.
isn't he?
Yes, he's Norwegian.
Wasn't the first guy that went to South Pole was last name was Amundsen?
Yeah, but he's a very cool guy.
Where'd that parchment go? Is there a picture of it or the gold chain?
Yes, I believe there's a picture of both the gold chain. I don't think it's in the museum. I haven't seen either myself. I've seen photos of the parchment, but I've never seen the actual thing. I have no idea where it is.
I think it went into a little chest. A treasure chest of some. All right, that was my last question.
Okay.
Thanks, Wolfman.
Okay, and if anybody else has questions on Oak Island, you can still call in, even though we're switching topics. Because I do want to talk about the Bell Island Boom. I don't think many of you know anything about it down there in the States.
People in Atlantic Canada don't know about it, oddly enough. People in Bell Island don't know about it.
I've talked to a few people from Bell Island. They don't know anything about it.
Yeah, I was surprised by that. When I was doing a lot of the research on it, I was in touch with a lot of people from Bell Island, and I had a little ad playing on the Bell Island radio station to try to get people who were involved or eyewitnesses to come forward. And I was getting a lot of people rolling their eyes, saying, "What kind of hell are you?
What kind of area? What kind of area did it actually affect? How big of an area?"
Well, really, the majority of what happened all happened on one property called the Bickford Farm. So it's really
Very centered. That's why.
Yeah, that was kind of ground zero. That's where like the weird stuff really went down. But everybody on the island and the surrounding area heard and felt the blast. But it's again, the Bickford Farm is where the rubber met the road in that story.
Okay, so and there was melt, and exactly what I heard about it anyway was a big loud boom, and there was melted telephone wires and hydro wires and unexplained things moving around, and possibly some kind of experimental weapon.
Yeah, well, there's lots of theories, and basically what it was it just sort of as you described, without any warning, a massive explosion in the sky that sounded like people described it as sounding like an earthquake, except coming from the sky right above their heads. People who were there described it as if a lightning blast went off, I guess it'd be thunder. If thunder sounded in the sky, except coming from way above the sky, if it came from the air just around your ears, is what some people said. It was just deafening, almost knock you over type of blast.
Was there people injured or hurt? I thought there was some injuries.
There was a couple chickens killed. They found where the blast actually occurred above where it actually ground zero, the Bickford Farm. He was inside his house. He heard the blast, felt the whole house shake, and he ran outside. And he had like a barn for chickens, and the barn was kind of half exploded. And he ran inside there, and his chickens were dead. His son, who is a young boy who I had spoke with as well, he was riding his bike on the street, and the son saw some weird stuff. The son was the one who saw the blast happened in front of his, like just before his son's eyes. A large ball of just bright light appeared in front of him and just kind of hovered there, making a loud sparking sound, and just like. And it just appeared in front of him, and it lasted, he said, like 2 or 3 seconds.
Okay, wait a minute. How far in front of him? Was it like in front of his face? Or
no, I think like 5 to 15 feet. Like he was standing there
large,
looking at it.
What does large mean? Was it like a size of a basketball or what?
No, the size of... if you built a snowman, do you have snowman in the U.S.? If you do, like it'd be like the ball you would put on the bottom. So it'd be like much bigger than a basketball. I can't even think of it. Like those big exercise balls that you would see at the gym. I don't know if they're used for yoga or something. One of those things.
And if you fill them with
I'm sitting on one right now.
It's about as big as that.
He fills his with water, and when he bounces too hard, it goes like this.
That's so funny.
Well, there was I read that with the boom that it was there was so much energy that it actually triggered some of the American nuclear test satellites.
Yeah, the defense, the American defense satellites picked it up exactly.
Yeah, and a couple like weapons researchers from the Los Alamos National Laboratory showed up because of the explosion. I mean, it's huge.
Yeah, as well as Russian scientists. There was Americans from Los Alamos who were studying at the time. Los Alamos is where a lot of experimental weapon testing was done and planning was done. They had sent 2 or 3 scientists, and this isn't rumors. This is confirmed. They're filmed. There's photographs of them from the newspapers and everything. They were there interviewing a lot of people, the Bickfords, as well as interviewing the fire marshal who was at the Bickford Farm. They were there and did some work, left. And what was really cool is when they were there, they would interview people, but they wouldn't talk to each other in front of the person. So what they would do is it'd be like if it was me and you interviewing somebody, I would ask the person we were interviewing a question and they'd answer. And then what they'd do is they'd take out a piece of paper and they'd write a note and show the notes to each other. So they didn't talk to each other in front of people. They both carried little books, and they wrote messages and showed it to each other, and that's how they communicated. So the whole thing is just there's a lot of secrecy and a lot of weird stuff. So the Los Alamos people were there, and then they came back with people from the Canadian military as well as the Russian military, and they all poked around. The people from Los Alamos were said to be working on weapons relating to harnessing a certain type of electrical power that some people believe that it could have been experimental weapons testing gone wrong. People think it could have been cloud seeding gone wrong, because this was at the height of the Cold War when this all went down. So all that freaky stuff with experimental weapons that was all in full swing. This was 1978 when the Belle Island boom occurred. The blast when it did go off, and we mentioned this earlier, but it was so strong that, again, it blew up the little barn and killed the chickens. It left a whole bunch of holes in his front lawn. But what else it did is it fried all the electrical system in his house. Like all his the wires in his walls all had to be replaced. But not only that, but the power lines leading to his house, whatever electrical thing happened, it created so much energy that the rubber insulation that covers the street wires, it just turned to a dust. And they said there's photos of this and you can see it online, but as you walk down the street, there was just like a line of powder underneath all the power lines where the rubber just disintegrated and just fell to the ground as black dust.
Did it not smash the glass out of his house too?
Oh yeah, well it also it smashed glass, caused structural damage. I interviewed the girl who lives in this house right now, lives in the Bickford firm. Are you looking at your soundboard for question ideas?
No. I did.
Yeah, go ahead.
I did nothing. I hear nothing. I see nothing.
Well, I had read that there were before the boom, people said they heard like a high-pitched like sound before the explosion, is what I've got from some of the reports that they said.
Yeah, they also, before the explosion, but could taste sulfur in the air. And immediately before the explosion, people saw a dust kind of in the air that had a sulfuric taste and a sulfuric smell. But what was weird is people said the dust wasn't falling to the ground, it was rising. So people said it just kind of got sort of like foggy, but with like an orangey kind of dust that seemed to be rising rather than dropping. There's been a few reports of that, but it's all, I guess speculation for us to say whether or not it actually happened, because it's not like they filmed it or anything like that.
We got a caller.
People have said that.
You're on the Monster Castle Paranormal Radio, sir? Or ma'am?
Hello?
Hello?
Is this me?
Yeah, it's you. This is the Wolfman Mike, all right, yeah!
Hey, Jordan.
Hey, buddy, who's this?
This is Alex.
Oh, Alex. This is my
Sorry,
favorite security
I'm by a
guard.
train station. This will go away momentarily, I promise.
It's all right.
Hey, so I was listening to what you were talking about with the Belle Island boom, and I specifically wanted to ask if, along with the sound, there was basically with what you're describing, was there power outages reported?
Oh yeah, like when that went down, the power was out right across Belle Island. Belle Island is a small island off the mainland. The mainland was unaffected. They heard
by the way,
blast,
what
Belle
year
Island
was
had
that?
power
What year
after
was
this.
that too? What year was that?
This was 1978.
Okay.
Yeah, because what you're describing is literally exactly all the symptoms of an EMP burst, which actually goes along with any nuclear blast. Any nuclear blast is going to have an EMP burst along with it. And power outages, circuits being fried even past the anti-conductive rubber and shit like that.
Okay, who am I talking to here? Who am I talking to? What's your name?
Alex.
Alex? Male or female Alex?
This is male.
Okay, all right. Because I just want to know so I don't call you hun or something.
No, it happens. Don't worry. And, yeah, you wouldn't want to do that.
still
You'd be
call
making
them
a
hun. I
mistake
do
there.
all the time.
Okay. Anyways, so wow, you are on the same page as me. I was thinking the same thing. EMP.
Yeah,
And, it was definitely not. I can't say definitely, but I would if I had to put my money on it, I would say this was an experimental or something gone wrong. Maybe it could be a like some scientists work in their basements and do shit like this too, eh? And it could be
see,
who
the
knows.
thing is, with an EMP blast, if you're talking about nuclear experiments, you could have a what's the word for water? Subaquatic.
Yeah, but it doesn't have to be nuclear.
Underwater explosion.
You don't have
still
to
get the EMP effects.
Now wait a minute, Alex. You don't have to be nuclear to make an EMP blast. You could
you don't.
you could just do it with bouncing frequencies off the ionosphere.
Yeah. Not to get in the way of that, another theory that's been put around and that a lot of people think is credible is that it was just a super rare type of ball lightning, and the ball lightning would explain the large glowing ball that the sun saw, because I guess ball lightning is something that can happen, but it's not well known at all. And these people from Los Alamos, what their explanation was for their involvement in the island is they thought it was ball lightning, and they were there to investigate and study the climate to see why ball lightning would appear and be so strong there. But there's been a lot of scientists who said the atmospheric conditions and basically the weather during this period of time when this happened would not be conducive to any type of electrical activity.
No, that's ridiculous. I don't even want to talk about that. That is so stupid. I don't even want to talk about that. It wasn't stupid ball lightning.
Yeah.
Come on.
Come on. I believe there's something to it. Absolutely, there's something unusual.
I can't. And by the way, I lost the Skype feed, but it's back on again. Mm-hmm. If Alex, was it Alex?
Yeah, did we lose him?
If we lost him. If Alex wants to call back, what happened was my computer that have my second line of Skype on crashed on me during that call. It's like it must be the government. They didn't want us to talk or something, But I'm reestablishing the connection, and we're going to get it back.
Good.
You guys, Darren and Jeff, do you have any questions about this? This is something you probably never heard about before, the Bell Island boom.
No, I've never heard of it at all.
No, it's something new to me. Now, I'm kind of familiar with the Superbolt, which is the the really powerful lightning, but they said there was none of that. I've read there's some reports of people saying there was like a beam of light that they say came out of the sky. But I mean, was that before or after the explosion? It's kind of hard to...
As the explosion happened. And that's just a few people, or I think just one person in particular, that was what they said they saw. Whether or not it's real or actually happened, who knows? But something definitely happened there because there's physical evidence of it. Atmospheric scientists do not believe it was lightning. That's the official government explanation, though. The Canadian government said it was caused by ball lightning. Take that for what it's worth.
Okay, that's it. The person that said that is definitely getting fucking bonked. That is stupid. Stupid. Think we're all dumb? Okay, that's it. I'm going to bonk you one more time and your head's going to split open.
Yeah, I don't think the government would send all their people. They had Alamos Labs send people there?
Yeah. And you can watch the old... there's a few documentaries about it. I linked them on my website. One of them was produced by the CBC, like the Canadian Broadcast Corporation, and these guys from Los Alamos are filmed in it. They weren't interviewed, but they're filmed there. Or maybe they are interviewed just briefly. But you can see them there, and you can see it. the aftermath of it all. There are interviews with the scientists and stuff. This documentary was filmed not long after it actually happened. There's newer documentaries. One is hosted by William Shatner. It's terrible.
Well,
they needed Spock. They needed In Search Of to go up there.
I do have I have a couple of experiences where I can say it's probably not lightning. I used to fly when I was in the Marines, and I within a month time frame, like 3 weeks, the aircraft got struck by lightning twice. And what's unusual is that when you're that close to the lightning, I mean, I'm in the aircraft and they get struck. You don't even there's no sonic boom. There is no sound. It's just a bright flash. That's all it is. No sound involved when you're right there. So, I mean, like I said, that's my personal experience. Twice I survived both of them. But like I said, it's like someone is taking your picture and it's just this bright flash, but there's no sound. So there's no way that could have been any type of lightning of any sort.
Mm.
I wonder if they
I
bounced
think that
something off
lightning is. Go ahead.
off the ionosphere. Like up in Alaska, and it just bounced off and landed there. And they're like, "Uh-oh, we better go figure out what we did."
Oops.
Right. That's quite a possibility. But I mean, I think the lightning or the whatever, not lightning, but it's like the explosion was secondary to whatever happened.
Mm-hmm.
But
And what we didn't get through in the conversation was leading up to the Belle Island boom. There was a whole lot of other smaller booms that were reported in the months. I think for about 6 months leading up to the Belle Island boom, there was massive explosions in the sky, booms heard all across the eastern seaboard of the U.S. up into Canada. The original idea, like people were complaining to the government and all this stuff, and they were trying to look into what was causing these booms.
All right.
And they believed it was the Concorde.
We got you back.
Sorry?
I'm sorry. We have the caller back.
Is Alex back in the building?
Back, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, welcome back. Are you working, Alex?
Actually, I'm waiting for my girlfriend to arrive on the train, and I'm looking around for a liquor store to buy her some booze.
Good call.
Wonderful. A classic libertarian, right?
You know what you do? You just.
I don't know what a libertarian is, but all your jokes are about politics that go over my head. I tried to make one.
Day.
You have to call back after the after show. In the after show.
I want to hear the jokes.
Oh, yeah?
I want to hear the jokes.
No, it's. I'm kidding.
What joke?
You got a good joke for us?
Shoot. What's harder than pinning dead babies to the wall?
Peeling them off?
Me as I do it.
I don't know who he is.
I was going to say... I would say peeling them off after like weeks of viewing.
Nope, me as I do it.
Oh, good Lord. What I was saying was the Concorde jet was to blame for all these booms that were occurring in the sky.
How do you stick a baby? Never mind.
The government had moved the flight path of the Concorde jets further out to sea, hoping that would create the sonic booms further out to sea and it wouldn't bother people. But it didn't really make much of a difference, and it all seemed to kind of climax with the Belle Island boom.
The other thing that's interesting about bringing up the Concorde jet, I'm a bit of a plane fanatic, and I actually like that plane. It got a lot of UFO reports on it, too. A lot of people who didn't know what they were saying as far as a civilian plane was going called that one in, too. So it wouldn't be surprising if there's some coincidence between your Belle Island experience and the Concorde flight path.
Yeah.
But don't you think they probably all were drinking about a wee bit too much screech out there?
Oh, I'm sure they were drinking too much screech.
They just a little bit over the edge of them. Don't you think now?
Well, that was one thing that was really fun about researching the Belle Island boom was getting to talk to all the colorful Newfoundlanders. I I interviewed Alex. You may have heard it because I released it on one of my Patreon bonus episodes. It was an interview with the current homeowner, Cynthia Bickford, and she is a sweet old lady, but with a very thick Newfoundland accent, and they sound quite comical.
Did she witness it?
Yeah, she was a young girl. She was upstairs in her bedroom when it happened. She ran downstairs and she ran outside with her dad, saw the whole thing, but her dad's long since passed away, and she still lives in the house, and she was telling me the whole story about the house isn't straight anymore. Like, if you stand outside and look at it, it's like structurally it's all off, and they can't fix it, but it's okay. I
want to ask the caller a question.
Do it.
How do you know this guy?
How do I know Jordan?
Yes.
I listened to his podcast. In fact, I started listening around like episode 3, and I've been following him ever since because I knew he had talent and he had potential, and I wanted to keep up with him.
He's got a great voice, don't you think? No.
I think he's got a better one than me.
I'd say Jordan has a very good voice on the radio.
Huh.
I would have to agree with you again. Like, I think he has a better voice than I do on the radio.
I don't know. Alex is also a up and coming podcaster, and I can't still got to get you on the show soon, Alex.
I can't even imitate you now, Jordan. Usually, I can imitate most people's voices, but actually, yours is hard to do.
Huh.
I don't.
Well, it's probably because I have a little bit of an Atlantic Canadian accent, but from years of working with, I think we're.
Did you take?
My
you must
fell up, like I lost it because I always worked at call centers talking to Americans.
You sound like. Sorry, man, you got no accent. You sound like an American.
Oh shit!
Yeah, he can certainly pass sometimes, but he definitely slips sometimes, and you can definitely hear
I think I've got a worse accent.
He's very understandable for us Americans as well. There's no language barrier that makes his podcast difficult to listen to whatsoever.
I think he's very articulate gentleman, and I really enjoy his voice, and I'm not making fun of him.
No. Do we have links to his podcast on our Facebook page?
Yeah. There will be. Yeah, it'll be
good.
Links to his podcast will all be all over our webpage for sure.
Yeah, if you get a chance, you definitely need to listen through his podcast. He's got some really good stories in there. I work as a security officer. I walk around at grave shift at night, and I specifically like his podcast because I like being creeped out when there's nobody around.
Trust me, I've listened to them, or I wouldn't have had him on. First, I found him online, and then I listened to some podcasts, and then I saw the Oak Island, and then I wanted to do a show about Oak Island, so that's when I found his Twitter, and then I tweeted to him, and I guess I was beaten to the punch by another fellow. Jim Malyard actually got you on before I did.
Hold on one second, Jordan. I just want you to understand what's happening here. We have, in the last minute, 3 references, at least, of 3 different individuals who picked up right away how good of a podcaster you are and wanted to back you up and get you on their shows.
There we go. I won.
Yeah, there you go, man. You got an awesome radio voice, so... and then I found out after I got a hold of you that Jim Malyard already had you on his show. So I listened to that show too.
Did you?
Yeah, I did before I had you on. Yeah.
And was that about? I don't remember what I talked to him about. Was it about Oak Island?
Oak Island, Bell Island Boom, and oh yeah, and we got to go into the Shag Harbor.
Oh God. Into the dark waters of Shag Harbor.
Oh yeah, we got to enter the waters of Shag Harbor.
Jordan, did anything happen after 78, or was that the end of it?
That's the end of it, and that's why it's forgotten about. People basically they fixed the damage. He had an electrician in, fixed all that. He got some landscaping done to fill in the big holes in his front lawn, and now it's just a legend. People tell the story, but. Like I said, when I was trying to find eyewitnesses and stuff, I thought what I could do is just go on Facebook and get a little thing put on the radio there that people would come out of the woodwork willing to tell me their story. but that wasn't the case at all. I had a lot of people saying, like, what is the, people from Bell Island saying, what is the Bell Island boom? And I had to send them links to, like, the Wikipedia article and stuff to show them that I wasn't crazy.
It almost sounds like that there was some kind of cover up and just shut the people up about it because, but then again, at that time, you would be looked on as a strange person if you talked about things like that.
Yeah,
so
especially in a small fishing community in Newfoundland.
You would want to be known as a crazy person, so you'd shove that under the carpet.
Mm-hmm. No, I didn't hear that boom.
Exactly. I didn't see nothing. But then for certain people, it affected their...
There's reports coming out recently of people that remember the boom. There was a guy who lived in Foxtrap, about 12 miles away, and he said that they were getting ready for church, and it was sunny out. It was April 2nd. And then, boom, they hear a sound. And they look over, and the guy looks over. There was no aircraft, nothing else. And then that was it. They thought it was the Concorde, but there was nothing else. That was it. So, I mean, there's people that are actually coming out now and talking about it at this point now that it's, hit the interwebs.
Yeah, it's just there's not a lot of research being done, and I guess it's probably hard to. But that's what I would like to hear, like somebody do like good research and try to figure it out. And I don't know. I wouldn't even know where to start myself, but that's what I think should happen.
I wonder if there's any radioactivity in the ground.
Well, yeah, we got to go back to the place. We got to do some research there. We got to get some GIGO meters. We got to do paranormal research there, like I normally do. I would treat it. I would treat it as a haunting, and I'd go from there. And I'd bring a medium with me and all the K2 meters and all that shit and some radioactive meters and anything else I could think of and just start from there, like Scooby-Doo, man.
Yeah, well, just you mentioned looking for something in the ground, but the history of Bell Island, it was a mining operation, and the ground is rich in iron ore, except it's all hollowed out now. In fact, geologists have an issue with people even living there because they say it's just a matter of time before the whole thing caves in on itself because it's so tunneled out below. It's a hollow out.
Alex, you still there? Alex?
Yeah, I'm still here. I just muted myself for the sake of in case any train came by. I didn't want to, interrupt your conversation.
What would you do?
What would I do?
To find out the research for this Bell Island boom, what could we do?
Personally, I'd drop it and look towards some of the other sounds that are being reported all over the world. If you look on YouTube, you can find that there are some of these similar, like, loud sounds that have no origin whatsoever, like just going across the atmosphere in strange places all over the place. I would think that investigatively you'd be finding dead ends right now, especially if the people on Bell Island are aware of the Bell Island boom. But that doesn't mean that you aren't finding completely similar instances happening in other places, even to this day. So I would probably start looking at similar instances happening now.
You know what? That's a great attitude. I heard recently a sound that I recorded the tail end of, which I would say is one of those sky sounds that you're talking about. Actually,
well, you're from Ontario, aren't you, Wolfman?
Yeah, man.
The Windsor hum happened?
Yeah, I haven't even told you about all the stuff that happens to me. Hey, Darren.
Yes.
Hey,
yes.
Darren, tell him all the shit that happens to me.
In a nutshell.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
But the Windsor hum's a unique thing. That's in Windsor, Ontario. They had a 35 hertz hum. I think they say it originates at Zug Island near Detroit, some kind of like a big commercial kind of or industrial type center there. But people have their doubts that that's where that's coming from.
Well,
maybe there's going to be a massive explosion there.
Could it have been a
honestly? I think.
Go ahead, Alex.
Impressive. The fact that, these people on Bell Island aren't even aware that it happened, and he's already pulled up all these news clippings and articles and done, this much research and found out that there was a Russian scientist on the site and people from Livermore. there. I mean, he may not be able to find out what it was, but I mean, the fact that he dug up as much as he did on something that's got such an icy trail already, I mean, I think that he'd do great putting his talents on those other things that are happening nowadays if he really looked into them.
I am so spellbound by it. Your research, Jordan. I agree with Alex completely.
Could it be a meteor, guys? A big meteor that landed right there?
It would have had to have been a meteor that was a small one and just broke the atmosphere. No, that's impossible. No, it was.
And it wouldn't
was,
explain the electrical anomalies.
No, the electrical anomaly. It has to be some kind of electromagnetic pulse weapon test. That's what I think. I don't know.
Agreed. That's exactly what it sounds like.
I don't think we'll solve it tonight. That's what I think.
We could try.
But, you know, it could have also been a solar flare that actually penetrated the atmosphere and got through just like a needle through a haystack, basically, and just hit that one spot. And that is possible.
Yeah.
Aliens. It's aliens.
No, well, maybe.
Maybe we'll have someone call in that knows what it was. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, a good Newfie call in.
So we go to the last subject?
Yeah. What was our? What was the other subject?
Wolfman?
I was thinking of the
Shag Harbor.
Shag Harbor event.
Well, maybe we should. Are you going to have another break soon? Because we could start it after. I just wouldn't want to get started and have a break kick in.
This is Jeff the Gray, co-host of Monster Castle Paranormal Radio on the KTLK Digital Broadcasting Network, thefringe.fm.
Monster Castle Paranormal.
Well, we are here at the Monster Castle, and I believe we have to do an electrocution. Jeff? Igor is ready.
Yes, I'm here. There's a person that we have dragged into the dungeon that needs to be electrocuted. He's really stupid. I don't like him. He believes in flat Earth.
No! No! No!
Can I do it? Oh, jeez.
No.
He didn't last long.
No.
A little bit more. Oh, yes. He's done. He's done. He's done.
I returned to my hometown yesterday, having my life, and my eyes came flashing back. So much has changed, and the faces look so strange. Sometimes I wish that I was young again. But if I close my eyes, to happy times, I can be 6 years old for a while. Honest friendships, high school dances, innocent short romances. Life was simple, but it sure was good somehow. And I drove to an old beach last night, a place I used to go not long ago. Walking barefoot in the sand, I saw 2 people holding hands, falling in love for their first time. But if I close my eyes, think on back to happier times, I can be 16 years old for a while. The honest friendships, high school dances, innocent short romances. Life was super, but it now I'm older, I guess, a little wiser, experiences added to my day. But I can't help but feel that I played part of who I am along the way. But if I close my eyes, think I'm back to happier times, I can be 16 years old for a while. Some honest friendships, high
It's not the song I wanted.
Oh, yeah, baby, yeah. Oh, shit, yeah.
Did you hear the Wolfman in there with his stupid Jews harp? There he is. And there he is. But it's not the song I wanted.
What do you want?
I'm going to find it. I am going to find it. Wait a minute. Okay. Search. I think it's called Farewell to Nova Scotia. I'm looking for that one. Where is everybody?
We're here.
You know what? You know what? I put Farewell in, and it came up within the first top 10 Farewell to Nova Scotia. Wow. The Irish Rovers are the first ones that did it. You know with that,
Jordan made a song suggestion.
Oh my God! And it's also a Gordon Lightfoot. I want to hear the Gordon Lightfoot. What about you guys? I want to hear the Gordon Lightfoot. Oh, Moog Boy loves Mike Oldfield too, eh? Return to Omadon is coming out soon. Wondering if he's heard. Oh my gosh, has he heard the latest one with Sailing and Man on an Island? I was going to play Man on the Rocks. Anyway, here we go. We're going to do this.
Oh, when I am far away on the briny ocean tossed, will you ever heave a sigh and wish for me? I grieve to leave my native land. I grieve to leave my comrades all, and my aged parents whom I always held so dear, the bonny, bonny lass that I do adore. Farewell, Nova Scotia, that sea-bound coast, that your mountains dark and dreary be. Oh, when I am far away on the briny ocean tossed, will you ever heave a sigh?
Stop it, Darren, why'd you do that? Uh-oh.
Blame it on Darren.
Yeah.
Oh, crap.
He did.
My fault.
Don't call my phone while I'm playing the song now.
Sorry.
So farewell, farewell to Nova Scotia's charm. There's early in the morning, I am far, far away. Farewell, Nova Scotia, that sea-bound coast, that your mountains dark and dreary be. Oh, when I'm far away on the briny ocean tossed, will you ever heave a sigh and wish for me? I have 3 brothers and they are at rest. Their arms are folded on their breast. Yet a poor simple sailor just like me should be tossed and driven on the dark blue sea. Farewell, Nova Scotia, that sea-bound coast, that your mountains dark and dreary be. Oh, when I'm far away on the briny ocean tossed, will you ever heave a sigh and wish for me? Farewell, Nova Scotia, that sea-bound coast, that your mountains dark and dreary be. Oh, when I am far away on the briny ocean tossed, will you ever heave a sigh and wish for me?
All right, guys. That's beautiful, eh? Oh, man. Now that's old school.
All right. Good music.
All right.
I had to hear that. We had to do that. Okay, now let's go to the Shag Harbor incident.
Let's do it.
When was it?
The Shag Harbor incident was just about to. We're just approaching the 50th anniversary. It happened October 4th, 1967. In Shag Harbor, Nova Scotia. So this is again the eastern part of Canada.
By the way, that's 1 year after I was born, and experimented on in the belly.
Shag Harbor incident, not well known in the States, but within Canada, among the the ufology community, very well known. People call it Canada's Roswell. It's seen as, I think, people who are really into the Canadians who are really into the UFO phenomenon think of it as much more compelling and much more credible than what happened in Roswell. What makes the Shag Harbor incident so compelling is the fact that so many people saw the same thing, that in so many unrelated people, independent witnesses, police were on scene, the Canadian Coast Guard was there, everybody saw something, and they all have a very similar story. But basically that story is that all across Nova Scotia for the days, and across Canada for that matter, for the days leading up to the incident itself, there was UFO sightings all over the place. But specifically that night, they call it the night of the UFOs because all across Atlantic Canada there are UFO sightings. But in Shag Harbor, where things really went down. The main eyewitness and the guy who's brought up the most when talking about it, his name is Laurie Wickens, and he was on an episode of my show sharing his story. But he, as well as I think 4 friends, were driving their car. They saw a series of lights above the tree line. It was a horizontal line of lights flashing on and off one after the other, kind of in a sequence. And he watched it. And when his initial thought was that it was an airplane and it was the lights were the wings of a plane. But as he was watching it, the line of lights, they seemed to be descending, and he started thinking, that plane's flying very low, and he started speeding up his car, kind of trying to keep up with it. And as he'd make the turns, he'd see it rise and fall above and below the tree line as the natural grade of the land rose and fell. But eventually, when he got up to the actual sound, which is like the actual water at Shag Harbor, he saw the set of lights from the sky cross the road in front of him and land into the water. Initially, they thought they were witnessing an aircraft, like an airplane, crash into the water. So they saw the lights go into the water. They stopped the car, looked out the window, and they could see a yellow light kind of under the water, which they assumed was the light on what they thought was a plane. So they then proceeded up the road a bit to the nearest payphone. And in 1967, they had payphones still, because this was before cell phones, which were more of a late 90s, early 2000s thing. So they called, I don't know if it was 911 or what, but they called like the local police. And the local police initially, when they reported, I think I saw an airplane crash. The local police kind of were rolling their eyes thinking, and said, like, are you sure? Because, that's really weird. But then right away, other calls started coming from other people from Shag Harbor reporting the same thing. And that was when police took it very seriously and basically told the guy who was calling, Laurie Wickens, to go back. We're sending police and, show them what you see. By the time Laurie Wickens showed up, there was already a few more people on the scene who saw it, and they were just, kind of gathering around. At this point, police showed up, Coast Guard showed up, people from all around Shag Harbor showed up. And what they saw was a pale yellow light just below the surface of the water, a good distance out into the water, and they watched that light slowly dissolve deeper and deeper into the water until it was out of sight. They got on a Coast Guard ship as well as a fishing vessel and went out there to try to intercept it, thinking they were going to save a bunch of lives, expecting, bodies everywhere, except, again, thinking it was a plane crash.
Sure.
But when they got out there, all they found was a thick yellow foam that was said to be almost like what you'd find on the top of a lemon meringue pie.
Oh, weird.
Yeah, so they got out there and found that.
It was like a Boston Tea Party, but nobody, like everyone went out and started licking the foam. Right? Right, Jordan? That's what happened, right?
There has not been.
How did it taste?
It made us really fucked up, man.
Yeah, but
how big was the town, Shag Harbor? Was it pretty popular?
Oh, it is a tiny little spot. I don't know if Shag Harbor has 1,000, maybe 5,000 people.
The first woman that licked the foam, her reaction was unmistakable.
I just looked up the
couldn't
population.
stop her.
450 people live there. So this is a small area, but pretty much I'd say probably half the people that were there that night saw it. And they sent divers the next day and didn't find anything.
And the foam dispersed?
Yeah, the foam was gone by the next day because when it all went down, it was in the middle of the night. So they were with flashlights seeing this foam. And a lot of the people on the scene, like Shag Harbor's a fishing community, and the people that were there were fishermen from the area, and they said it was on like any natural sea foam. This was a whole different thing.
Have they explored the bottom?
But the next day, when the Coast Guards, they tried everything. They had divers down there for almost a week straight. And you can find online, this was all over the papers. This was a big deal there because people were pretty sure something was in the water because so many people saw it land in the water. There was no explanation for what it was, and it's still unexplained. There has been reports of at night trucks pulling stuff out of the water, because the search went on for about a week straight. And there has been reports that stuff was pulled out of the water and removed on truck. So some people think it was. There was also reports where about a week after the event, just as everything was kind of winding down, somebody who lives very near the water there, their TV wasn't working. The TV just went out all of a sudden. So they went outside to adjust their satellite dish or their antenna or whatever, and they testified that they had saw lights leave the water and go into the sky. So some people believe it maybe was the whatever it was leaving.
Any witnesses to the trucks?
Yes, I think 3 people, but they were all together, so it was kind of, one group. Although there were 3 of them, they're together, but that's different than, 3 separate people unrelated to each other. But I think there was 3 of them that said they saw that happen. Had no proof, no photos or anything.
Are they still alive? Have you talked to them by chance?
They are. I think, as far as I know, they're still alive. I had not talked to them, nor have I talked to the person that said they saw the lights leave the water. I tried to get in touch with them without any luck. But I plan, with the 50th anniversary coming up, October of 2017, I plan to do more episodes about it. So I'm looking at different ways to investigate it, and that's something I'm thinking is to try to get in touch with these people.
I wish you could see the bottom of the ocean there.
Have they actually dredged any of that? My dad used to work for the Public Works Canada. I know a lot about dredging. Has anyone from the government publicized any dredging going on there?
Not that I've heard of. As far as I know, it was just divers that went down.
Because they have to dredge once in a while, these places. Once in a while. So if they dredge, then they must have hit something. That would be worth looking into.
Is it true that they had Navy ships there that spotted the something on sonar?
You know what? There's this whole subplot about Shag Harbor, about the Navy and the Coast Guard chasing something.
Okay,
over a period of time. But
can I ask something? Because as my dad worked in Public Works Canada, I know a lot about harbors and stuff. Is this harbor a place where ships still dock today?
Oh yeah.
So then they definitely would have to dredge.
Yeah, but it would be small fishing vessels.
But they still have to dredge it once in a while. So they have to dredge it. It's a harbor. So they have to dredge it. So this is what we need to look into. I just thought of it. Actually,
and it's
if
not
we can
really
find
a
it,
harbor
you know what?
Either the area is called Shag Harbor.
Okay,
but it's
is it
not
off
really
the
a harbor.
ocean or is it off the St. Lawrence River? Or where?
Off the ocean.
It's off the ocean.
The area is Shag Harbor, but the body.
So
of water,
maybe they
call
may
the
not.
Sound,
Yeah, maybe they may not dredge that.
Yeah, and it would be the vessels that would be going in and out of the Sound are
unless vessels have to go in and out and dock there. If they do, then they would dredge it, and this is something we could look into and find out whether if there's any documents that probably no one's ever. I just thought of this. I don't think anyone else.
Maybe you're the one to break the case.
Well, this could do it if we find some dredging reports from Public Works Canada where they hit objects, strange objects in that area. I just thought of it. That would be a way of proving this shit. Right?
Isn't there a like a submarine base near there, or within?
Yeah. Well, at the time when there was in Shelburne, which is nearby, there was a lot going on there with the military and Department of Defense. It's since wound down, but there was a lot more then, as well as things in that time. There was just more activity with the Department of Defense in Canada.
Actually, I didn't mean to say prove it. Actually, but find some evidence.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would love to dive there. If I could get there with a wetsuit, I would go down there looking around.
Well, it would kind of prove it. It would prove something if we found some evidence in that area. Everyone saw this. There's multiple witnesses. The strange foam afterwards. That's what she said. Right?
I don't get it.
Okay, Jeff?
It's pretty bad there, Wolfman.
I'm terrible.
It's kind of an unusual color, yellow. For a UFO.
Yeah, it is weird, but some people think it could have been a flare, but people say that about every UFO. There is some reason, though, to believe that it could have been a flare, mainly because there was, at this time, there was a lot of surveillance being done overseas. Back then, before digital film, surveillance was on actual film, and the film canisters had to be returned to the military base for viewing. And oftentimes, what happened is the film canisters was in a container connected to a flare and dropped, and then somebody would come back and collect it, or it would have like a little receiver thing in it where they could find it. Some people believe it could have been a film canister being dropped and picked up by a submarine.
I wonder what caused the foam. That's what's most interesting to me.
Yeah,
what would create foam? Would heat create foam?
I wonder if a flare being dropped into the water would create foam. And
actually,
the Shag Harbor Incident Society says it wouldn't.
No, that is definitely a chemical reaction.
Yeah, there's some of the fishermen said that they it was this yellow foam and it smelled like a sulfur, which is really, that would
sulfur
make sense.
Again.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's definitely a mystery, and it's been looked into like crazy. There's two really good books on the incident that I can think of. One's called Dark Object by Chris Stiles and Don Ledger, both of which were on episodes of my show. The other is called Impact to Contact. That's by Chris Stiles and Graham Sims. Both of these people really Chris Stiles, he's a ufologist from Nova Scotia. I did 2 episodes on Shag Harbor Incident, and he was on one of them. He's really the guy that brought the story into the public eye. It was a UFO sighting in '67. People knew about it, but it really just kind of just nothing happened with it until I think it was in the late 80s. He opened a reinvestigation where he just pulled all the documents out. He joined MUFON is what happened. He pulled all the documents out and just started going through it, and through the Access to Information Act or whatever it's called. He got a lot of new information. Yes, Freedom of Information Act. He got a lot of new information from the government, and as he started to reinvestigate, he was the one who uncovered the rest of the story that made it look much more compelling and made it well known. So he's the guy. This is his story, really.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, it is crazy, and I'm really into UFOs. I'm a member of MUFON myself.
Have you seen anything?
Yeah, I have. I had seen a UFO when I was about 7 years old. Myself and my older brother and all the kids in my neighborhood, we were all at the top of my street, tobogganing or sledding in the snow. And it was sundown, so it was dark, and it was just around the end of the night. And I can remember it so clearly. Myself and my brother were at the bottom of the hill, and I was like, we're both holding our sleds, or the ropes connected to our sleds, making our way back up the hill to go down again. And then just out of nowhere, a light above us lit up the area like brighter than daylight. Like it was just like glowing bright. And I just kind of remember shielding my eyes, and the brightness on the snow, I remember just like blinding me. And it just lasted for, I don't know, like it's hard to say because it was so intense, but maybe lasted for like 20 seconds or something. And I didn't look up at what it was, but whatever the bright light was, it was like right above us. And then I can remember just like a massive, like almost like if someone shuts a door, not so much like the door closing and that clicking sound, but just like the whoo, when like if you swung the door really quick, just the sound of it moving through the air. It was almost like that sound, but like so strong and powerful. And then the light went out, and all the kids, like the older kids, we all just started running, and the younger kids just started bawling and crying. So there's maybe 15 of us there or something, and we all ran home and all told our parents the same story. And that was the end of it. But that was, I think, what really got me into it was that happening. But unrelated, and I know it sounds creepy because people roll their eyes at UFO stories, especially when someone says they saw something. But when I say I saw a UFO, I don't mean it was an extraterrestrial alien thing, just some bizarre thing in the sky that I don't know what it was. But my grandfather and grandmother also in 1986 had a sighting of a UFO that was reported to the you can even read about it on Wikipedia. It was reported to the government, and I don't know if it was investigated. It was ruled to be what's called a fireball, which is a type of meteorite. I don't know.
Okay, well that's my territory.
Yeah. So what they saw was said to be a fireball. My grandfather
really now. Okay. No, wait a minute. Back up. Explain the fireball. This is my expertise, actually.
Okay. I don't know much about it, but it was basically they were driving their vehicle in a very rural area,
and they saw a fireball go really slowly across the sky, very low to the ground. Looked like it was burning. Not only move
across the sky. My grandfather said it stopped above their car.
Yeah, and it moved.
Stopped above their car.
Exactly.
He lost power of his vehicle.
I had one of them chase me actually in my field when I was irrigating. My brother took off. I hid in the ditch, and then I had a missing time event.
Interesting.
Did they have missing time?
No, they didn't. They were just scared out of their wits, is basically it.
Yeah, well, you know what? A lot of people don't even realize when they have a missing time event because they don't bother to look at their clock. And I didn't think about it till afterwards when I heard about missing time events, and I realized that, shit, it was about 4 o'clock in the morning when I jumped in that ditch, and the next thing I knew, the light was coming up, and that's got to be 6 o'clock in the morning, so I must have had 2 hours missing time. So you really have to think about it, and like there's nobody that's over your shoulder monitoring what time it is for you.
So, get real quick though. Their car stopped working, and the fireball stayed over their car. How big was the fireball? How long did it stay there? Did their car start up again?
Yeah, their car started up again after the fireball left. And I'm calling it a fireball. My grandfather would be mad if he heard me saying this because he's like, it's not a fireball. Fireballs don't stop is what he says over and over again.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. It kind of puts you right out of perspective on reality.
Yeah, but
Did it smell?
No, I hadn't asked him that.
No,
but
they don't
he hadn't
smell.
mentioned
It's
it.
too high up. They're way up there, man.
Well, in his case, it wasn't way up there. He told me it was probably 25 feet above his car.
Yeah, but you know what? It's perspective. Unless
Yeah.
you have a tree branch in front of it and there's something that you can give some kind of a perspective to, that you really don't know how far that thing is away from you. I had one come right up to my face, okay? I could put my hand in front of it. Now I know how far it is away from me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the thing with UFO sightings, it's hard to say what it is because you have eyewitness accounts of something that's traumatic, and it's hard to get concrete information out of them. In fact, my grandfather's sighting and grandmother's sighting is what really started my podcast, because initially I was planning to do a short documentary about my research into their sighting, because I kind of took it on as like just sort of a pet project to try to figure out what may have happened to them. So I took recorded a interview with him about it, and then I kind of went through every detail he gave me to try to just corroborate everything. So I looked into the historical weather data to confirm that the weather was as he said, and he was on a way to a wake for a friend who had passed away. So I pulled the death records to make sure the wake was when he said it was, because he knew the exact date because it was on his son's birthday. So I kind of confirmed everything. The weather matched. Every detail he told me matched. And as far as whether or not it's a fireball, one thing that was in the fireball's favor is that in nearby Newfoundland, which isn't too far from where my granddad had saw what he had saw, there was a meteor shower that night, and it was very clear skies in Newfoundland. Where he was, it wasn't clear skies. It was cloudy and overcast. So if it was a fireball or some type of object, it had to be below the cloud cover. So it was definitely low, whatever it was.
It was at nighttime?
Yeah, it was. It was. I think it was about 8 o'clock.
So they actually saw it below the cloud cover. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty much identical to what my parents described to me. I'm not kidding. And it moved and stopped, and what kind of and my dad said to my mom, "No, it's just a fireball. It's just a meteor." And my mom's like, "But Peter, it's stopped." And now it's moving different way, and it's so low, and it's moving so slow. That can't be a meteor. It can't be. And
Jordan, you got to get Wolfman on your podcast. He's seen 3 of these things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I can tell you some stories about Lake Erie, dude. That'll freak you right out. I know
It's a
some
wild place.
Well, it's all my own experiences. I don't think anybody else knows about this shit except me.
So I saw somebody just put up on the Skype the photograph of Shag Harbor. That was you, Jeff? Can you hear me, Jeff?
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah,
well, there's
I can
other
tell you
people.
the story of that photo. So there is one photo of the Shag Harbor UFO sighting, and it's what you had put up. It's an odd looking photo because it was a time lapse photo. It was actually taken by a guy who his boat was in rough shape, so he decided to burn it, and he was taking time lapse photographs of himself burning his boat. And this is one of the photographs that he managed to take, and he managed to capture the lights in the sky. It was taken over, I think, a 15 or 20 minute. Like a 15 or 20 minute exposure, and that's why when you look at the photograph, you see that the stars have a tail, because it's capturing the movement of the Earth, hence leaving the lines around for the stars. There's 3 lights that it captured: the purple light, and the red light, and then a yellow light to the left. The yellow light doesn't have any motion associated with it. The other two do have the line. So what the belief is that since the yellow light doesn't have motion associated with it in terms of the photograph, the yellow light must have been moving along with the Earth to prevent it from appearing blurred and like a stroke like the other things are. But that's a cool photograph.
I wish they would have taken a sample of the goo.
Yeah, that definitely would have helped.
I have a sample of the goo for you, Darren. And I will mail it to you. Jeff, make sure did you send him the other things to make sure that his mind will succumb to the... Yes. You will be, just like the rest of you. You will succumb. No. Yes. Never mind. That's just my evil plan. Anyways, so the... oh, man. So it went under the water, and that's what freaks me out. Around
USO, they call it an unidentified submersible object.
That's what I dig, man. And it reminds me of like Atlantis and all those things. And now, you know, we found out that if we drain the water that the ice, you know, that melted from the ice age, then we would have all kinds of stuff to look at, and it's really hard to look at it underwater.
I'd like to see what's under Antarctica.
Oh, dude, Antarctica is a whole different show, and I'm planning a show for that one too.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Oh yeah, Antarctica is a whole different show. I heard of a scientist that I'm trying to get a hold of that would. He's not going to give us his name, that's for sure. I might be able to get him on the show as an anonymous sort of person to talk about Antarctica.
I saw a picture of a mountain on Antarctica today. It's like a perfect looking pyramid.
The other person that I'd like to get on that show is Athena. Remember Athena?
Yeah.
And we can have her on as well, and I'll tell her ahead to have some information ready for Antarctica. She talks to aliens, Jordan.
Okay.
Her mother channels the Watchers. So basically, I can get any answer to any question I want. This is fucked.
In other words, you should have her on your show.
You know, Athena is amazing, man.
It sounds interesting.
And also, I'm gonna have Elizabeth April on my show on December 3rd coming up, and she is a very powerful psychic, and she could pretty much answer any question you want to.
Oh, cool.
So that's coming up.
Is there anything besides Shag Harbor and the Boom and the Oak Island up there that we don't know about?
Probably. If you go through my episodes, there's probably a whole bunch of them. I've done about 30 episodes. Well, yeah, 30 episodes so far, and all of it is Atlantic Canadian events. Not all of it in the realm of the paranormal or the mysterious, though. I cover true crime as well. So I have a few episodes up in that alley, but there's definitely other things that I've covered that you wouldn't have heard of. Cool one is there's a whole bunch of them, but the Bears Lake Mystery Walls is one of my favorite just because it's like at my doorstep. Basically, it's an unexplained archaeological site right in Halifax. It's basically just off the side of the road in a major industrial park. So we have like a Costco and a Walmart. And a dollar store, and then across the street and kind of into the bushes a little bit is stone structures that nobody's been able to explain. In fact, the Nova Scotia Archaeological Society just got a government grant to do a bit more research this coming spring, where they're hoping to at least be able to try to date when these walls were built, but they haven't been able to explain it. I did an episode on them where I interviewed the guy who found the walls, the main archaeologist who's studying them, as well as a member of the Archaeological Society who's in charge of finding protection and basically lobbying the government to assign some type of act to protect the sites from people just walking up and knocking it over, basically. But that's
what's it look like?
It's actually 3 separate structures. One area is a stone wall that's 150 meters long. It's dry stacked masonry construction, so it's just stones on top of stones without any mortar or anything. It's about 1 meter high and 1 meter wide, so it's a big honking wall, 150 meters long, right on a ridge. So it's in the woods, and it's kind of just a natural hill. Right at the top of the hill, this wall runs along a winding path, so it's not like a straight line, like a property line or something. So that's one structure. The other is this area they call the Stairway to Nowhere, which is basically just a complicated stairway built into the side of that hill that's near the wall. And it just seems really unusual and overbuilt up, because you could just walk up the hill. There's no need to put this complicated staircase there. And the third structure is, we call it the 7-sided structure, and it looks like the foundation of a building. Using those same dimensions, it's 1 meter wide, meter high, dry stacked stone. But it looks like the foundation of a building, except it's a weird shape. It's 7 sides rather than a square you'd expect. It's 7 sides, and in the center of it, there's kind of another area that's kind of sealed off with a wall. So it's kind of like a sort of like an octagon shape, but there's kind of a line through the center of it where there's separate kind of 2 areas. But the big mystery is what it could have been used for. And some people think maybe farmland, but like if you were a farmer, you would build a wall with not big heavy stone stacked up. It's more military in nature. But given the location, there's no reason for there to be any military